So last week after I talked to myself, I ended up getting checked into the psych ward. And I'm still technically admitted to the psych ward. I'm off the ward on a overnight pass, and I had an overnight pass last night too. So this is my first time being hospitalized in nearly 3 years. The last time was April of 2016, and it's 2019 April now, so I made it 3 years, and it's possible it could have been prevented. I think had I been able to really stick to my routine that I had of talking to myself, as well as the supplements, and not putting so much pressure on myself, maybe this wouldn't have happened. But I think it's all happened for a reason, and I basically feel back at the very beginning of the so-called recovery journey, right back at the beginning. Not really showering very much, not taking care of myself, not really knowing what to do next, not really feeling like going backwards to things that I was doing before in terms of certain mental health supports. Is it either? So I really don't know. I'm kind of back at a blank slate. I'm thinking it would be good to get some work, maybe some kind of driving job, because I like driving. And yeah, I'm not sure what's next, but I've made a few notes to myself about a few things that I want to try to explore. But basically, I'm wanting, and I went to the psych ward in order to sort of tone down my intolerance to the noise and to people's voices, and I think I'm on medications now to do so. And what happened too was I didn't realize, or I forgot, that lithium is a medication to go on to slowly, and I had taken 2 nights in a row at 900 milligrams. So when I saw the clinician for the intake, it was just supposed to be an intake. I told her that, and she said, oh, you're supposed to go up slowly, talk to your GP about that. And she also told me that I wouldn't be able to see a psychiatrist for several months, maybe not until August. So that's the reason why I decided to go the hospital route, was because I wasn't sure if I could continue with the pain and everything that was going on for the same amount of time I already had been bearing it, which was over 2 months. So I kind of, was upset, and then she said that she could take me to the hospital to see a psychiatrist. And then that psychiatrist suggested that I stay. And I thought I was checking myself involuntarily, but they very, very quickly certified me. And I was stuck, and I had to sit in a chair for over 24 hours because there were no beds. So there's a few chairs in the psych emergency waiting area. So that was an experience within itself, because I was sort of thinking about sleeping in my car and whether I could do that, and I did end up sleeping in a chair. And then the psych ward has been pretty boring because I'm not really like super psychotic. Like usually when I've been in there in the past, I've really needed to be in there, and I'm like suffering, and the time goes by like that. But I've done a lot of sort of walking in circles, and it has taken away the suicidal feeling so far, and also the angry, wanting to rage on someone feeling. So that's good. So this buys me more time to figure out the next steps, which I'm not quite sure what they are. But I was looking up the Vancouver Dream Center, and there is a Metro Vancouver Dream Center thing, and they have meal nights on Fridays sometimes, and then they also have a food bank. So for me, I think participating in that in some way, since it was part of my delusion, could be something good to do. And also, there's a spiritual community nearby, so perhaps exploring that. And also looking into things like camper vans and tiny homes and a way to live sustainably on a low income, so as to not live in an area or an environment where I feel like I might explode. It's kind of staying alive. And I went the mental patient route because if I let things get explosive within me and exploded on my family or something, I would probably end up homeless. And I think I kind of need to prepare myself to be homeless for certain reasons that I'll go into. And until then, there are a few more things that I want to talk about with myself regarding what I've been working on a little bit. And I haven't been working on it that much because I'm in a space right now of very low functionality, not even really taking care of my body. And I think this is part of what was meant to happen. I haven't had this happen the entire 3 years I was talking with myself on video. Haven't had this happen where I just don't feel like showering or getting ready or whatever. And I've gained some weight. And many of the days in the recent past before I was hospitalized, I would just sit at the outdoor mall, just kind of sit there, not showered, probably looking kind of homeless, or sit at the park, and there wasn't much else I could really do or wanted to do because I hadn't really created something to get into and get into a routine. So I really was feeling the homeless consciousness and the excruciating pain that goes with it. And I can see that I understand why a lot of them take some kind of street drug, because there is a pain that goes with it. It's very agonizing. It's very excruciating. And a way to get rid of it would be to take some kind of illicit drug. And I was experiencing that stuff, that pain, and I'm not in a circle where I could get access to any kind of illicit drug, but if I was, I'm sure I would have tried to take something. I did take CBD oil for a while, but it didn't really seem to do very much for me. Maybe it wasn't a high enough dose or whatever, but I kind of wanted to get through the pain and not block it, because I was thinking at some point it would end. And, by going into the psych ward, basically it's a major gesture towards my life and to the universe that, okay, yeah, I'm a mental patient. You can treat me like a mental patient. You can give me the drugs like a mental patient. And when I'm a mental patient, I think the pain of homelessness goes away, because now I've sort of put myself into the mental patient category instead of the homeless person category. Though I could say a few sentences to my family and I would be probably homeless. So it's very a fine line. It's very much a fine line, and this is a conversation they wouldn't want to have. So it's not one of those things where I should just go start having the conversation. They don't want to know these things, and I know them, and it's hard to not say them sometimes or be honest at a certain point. So, but that's what we all do, and I'll explain more of that later, at a later point, and what's happened with that. And this whole bipolar diagnosis has allowed me to, and has bought me time in this reality, being a mental patient, which, it's challenging, but there's a lot of movement in that realm to make people with mental health diagnoses welcome and included in everything. So I've never really felt stigma, yet it's allowed me to block out and sort of bury certain other things that have happened, and I think that I need to move into that space, and that could be why, everything I do in mental health right now seems to be, sort of broken off, as in I'm not accessing it. Like all of the supports I've had in mental health, and sort of just being this blank slate, including not really showering and taking care of myself. So, and I also, like going to the hospital, I missed 2 evenings I could have spent with Master Dion V. Mall. So it's like I just keep missing out on things. I keep missing out. Something is coming up and then something happens and I can't do it. So I think the universe is sort of preventing me from going back into some of these lofty things that it has in the past allowed me to do, like study Krishnamurti's teachings and the power and the beauty of that, and be presentable and be sort of respected in the mental health world and everything like that. And I think I'm going to have to move into something else, which is not as respectable, but it's also necessary, to be truthful. And I would have brought this up before, but it really was buried, and it did come to mind a few times to bring up and share, but I continued to bury it so that I could go along with my plans and my dreams that I wanted to be able to carry out. And that could be why, now that I have carried out those plans and dreams, the universe is like, okay, we gave you that tangent reality time to do those things that you wanted to do, and now it's time to get with the real issues. And hopefully this medication change will buy me time to do that. So for me, a step towards that would be this Dream Center movement. They want a location, so I'm assuming it's the same kind of thing that I was given the information about almost 8 years ago now. And so maybe less talking to myself and more like action, like volunteering, and volunteering with the proper things that are in alignment with what I'm supposed to do. I've created ideas around community and creative community and everything. I don't even know if I'm like ready to do that sort of thing, but it's a possibility. But volunteering, like personally going and volunteering at a meal night for homeless people, is something that I can physically do. And getting a job is something I can physically do. So I have put earning money on the wayside a little bit in order to talk to myself and talk myself through a lot of this bipolar stuff, and seeing that leaving the process aside of talking to myself almost on a daily basis has led me to fall into sort of the worst state I've been in ever since the beginning. I think that shows that this process of self-dialogue does work, because when I stopped it, things really started to fall apart. But I wanted to explore a different domain. I wanted to explore having relationship with an actual person rather than an objective phone. And maybe I think there's room for both. But this process I created to keep me safe. And now that part of the worst has happened, which is I went back to the psych ward, and it wasn't that bad. A lot of this process was to avoid the psych ward because it's scary. And now I feel like having some support from the mental health system is helpful, because it's playing the role in the game of being a mental patient. And when I was first hospitalized almost 8 years ago now, I remember making a deal with the universe that I would play the role of mental patient in order to stay with my family and to keep all the rest of them safe, because there were weird realities overlapping of not so great possibilities. So I said, just make me a mental patient. All that was just confusion in my mind, and I'll go on with it. And I had a fun time with it for a long time, quite a few years. And then when I started working in it, it wasn't as funny, because I saw so many people struggling, like, that I was working with. Whereas before I was just sort of making fun of myself and having a good time and trying to make people laugh. And so by working in it, I realized that there's a lot not to laugh about. And I've had bad experiences in the psych ward of things not to laugh about and everything. So, and this time particularly, I've suffered extremely. Like, I can't even tell you how much physical pain and agony I've been through. It's such pain, it's incredible. So I'm hoping that's over now that I went to the psych ward, because I checked myself into the psych ward, or I got in on a Thursday night, and on the Monday night that week I had this experience where I was literally feeling like either swallowing a ton of pills or like calling on my mom and just like bitching at her for a bunch of stuff and creating this big dramatic scene, which could lead to me being asked to leave or something like that, depending on what I say. It felt kind of uncontrollable. And I took some meds and got through it. So what I learned this time by going to the psych ward is there were 4 or 5 chairs of people waiting to go up to the ward. And one of the guys in one of the chairs, he had overdosed on medication. And it's not very glamorous, because I was thinking of overdosing on medication, and I don't think it would work. Basically, he said after he swallowed the bottle of pills, the police were at his door 10 minutes later, and he doesn't know how that was possible, because only 2 people knew, and both people said they didn't call. So for me, this is like, whether someone called or not, there's evidence that it won't work. Like, I could take pills and I'd just be taken to the hospital and have to take the charcoal and all of that. And so basically he was stuck in just one of these chairs, not even a bed, with an IV for like 4 or 5 days. So, you think, oh, you take pills, you'll have your own room, they're gonna like do this to you and that, and you'll rest. No, it's not pretty. And he also shared that he's been in the hospital 40 to 50 times. And that's incredible. Like my time was, I guess, the 6th time. And yeah, so I got that sort of information where, you know, swallowing pills and thinking that that's the route back to reality isn't a good route. It's better to go on one's 2 feet and just admit, you know, I had to admit how suicidal I was feeling, which I was, which now I can only sense by its absence, which is nice. And also what I heard them say was, for me, since I was on lithium and I was just taking 900 a night, and they would put me in the hospital basically so they could taper me up on lithium slower and change a few other things. I heard them say when I was still in the chair, I was in there for medication non-compliance. And I was like, oh. Basically what happened for me was I was on lithium orotate and taking all those supportive supplements, and then when I was sort of starting to forget to take lithium orotate, I wasn't technically on any lithium, which is not really a good idea. So now I'm back on lithium. I'm back on what the psychiatrist did is they put me on half, like 150 milligrams Seroquel XR, which I didn't want, and 150 milligrams of Seroquel fast release. But I think since the time I freaked out, the last hospitalization, they tried to put me on 800 milligrams of Seroquel XR, and it freaked me out. But I think just taking 150 at night could be enough to sort of release it slowly into my system, just to have a little bit of it in my system during the day, so I'm not quite so freaky. And I do feel slow and everything, but right now I don't even care. I'd rather just feel slow and calm and not reactive to noise or what have you, and be able to figure out what to do in life now. Figure out just what I can do and take it slow and not freak out and not make a big scene and get kicked out and be homeless. Like, there's no reason to do that. So I'm hoping that I can figure out what to do with my life next, and just stay on these drugs and figure out what happens now in terms of seeing the mental health team. And you know, it's kind of an excuse. Like, I know some of the deeper issues that are probably underlying this, but when people don't want to have those conversations, and I don't necessarily want to have them right now either, there's this whole like mental health thing, and that's fine for now. You know, it just sort of buys me time. And it's just interesting how in California I'm like flying high and everything's great, and who I manifest as here is kind of just not as good. And I just saw something, I don't know if it's true, but there's this man I met in California years ago, and he looked like Jesus, and he was very like raw vegan and put together, and then I left California that time years ago, and when I came back, the guy that I saw that told me to create the Dream Center, he looked exactly the same as the other guy. And I just was thinking now, it's almost like there's two versions. Like there's two worlds, there's two versions. And the version here, like the guy who told me about the Dream Center, he was like in a in a wheelie chair and like not functional and living in a crappy place, and the other guy was like fruit picker, a healthy guy. And yeah, we could have two parallel versions of ourselves. And I think there's more than that, and that's something that I want to talk about a little bit next, because I'm on this thing about how this information that we get in so-called bipolar, I think there's some coherence behind it and there's some kind of meaning. And I think that artificial intelligence could help us with it. And the way that it could do that is if we typed up some of our stuff or submitted some of the stuff that we have typed up, it could kind of analyze it and find meaning and patterns and stories and so many things that, you know, if we are bipolar and we see a psychiatrist, they only listen for symptoms. They don't read the work that we created. And I think we do some kind of work, and I think artificial intelligence can help us with that, to collate it and just even keep it in a database. And I'll talk about that more in one of the next videos, because it's an idea and I'm also working on it at the same time. And interestingly enough, I don't know if I have any more words to add. I think had I written stuff down in my last mania, I don't know what there would have been. There would have been some stuff for sure. But in that last one, I really was more being social and building a certain relationship, which I may want to continue to build. Well, I do. I'm just not sure how that's gonna play out. And so yeah, I want to sort of detach from these words, but yeah, there's several points I want to make about all these words, and even all these words that I've spoken on video to myself. So tomorrow I should be discharged from the hospital, and I'm going to work on trying to work and volunteer and to do what I need to do to survive, I guess. Survive. So I don't know if there'll be a next mania. It's supposed to be coming up soon. And, you know, maybe in this next mania, instead of writing more words or doing this or doing that, I can maybe create or listen to some of what I was told to do, like in the original mania, like create this dream center or something. Because I see, one of the things that I've seen is that when I've dissociated in the past during psychosis several times, I felt like a homeless person. Like I didn't feel like myself, but I felt like a homeless person. And I recently realized that that was almost like I wasn't tapping into the past or like somebody else, but I think I was tapping into a future version of myself. And I'd be scared sitting there, and I realized that I had to go through the mental health system in order to make me feel like not a homeless person. But there could be ways that I do end up homeless, and there is a fear, there's like a pain that goes with that, and there's a fear. And so I think I was tapping into a future possible self, and it might be a possibility that I end up living out. And I think that's why I'm sort of exploring how that might look. I was exploring like gnome homes, camping areas. I set up my car to be able to sleep in it, though I didn't test out if it's comfortable. And I was watching videos on sleeping in your car and where to sleep in your car. So one thing I'm going to do is pack up my magical backpack with like minimalist things. Not to have everything with me, but what I would need for sure. And just to be able to maybe just sort of go or wander. I'm not sure what that would look like. You know, like deciding what I would wear, something, one thing or two things to wear, that's it. This would be the time to experiment with that. So yeah, I'm really not sure, but I think only talking to myself amongst a bunch of information, of course I could like extrapolate more and more information from this information, but I need to feel safe and like I have a home, and because I'm doing this bipolar word stuff, and then at the same time I don't have a home where I feel completely safe. So the words can make it feel like there's some safety in that, but maybe there's not. So yeah, I'll talk more about the words in a bit.